Welcome back to the Stay Broke podcast. Today we're joined by Brad Walker, a Wake Forest-based realtor and community leader who wears several hats. He serves as the executive secretary of the Rotary Club of Wake Forest, where his leadership has been instrumental in building programs that strengthen local business. As Rotary president in 2017, Brad established Launch Wake Forest, a 10-week accelerator program that equips local entrepreneurs with practical training, mentorship, and connections to resources. He continues to serve as program administrator for both Launch Wake Forest and Launch Rollsville, helping entrepreneurs go from idea to execution and laying the groundwork for long-term success. Outside of the Rotary Club, Brad is an active real estate broker with years of experience guiding property transactions in Wake Forest and across the Triangle. His career and community work intersect around a clear theme: building sustainable businesses and a stronger community. Thank you for joining us, Brad.
Thank you for having me.
So, let's start off with just your background. Who are you? Where'd you come from?
Cool. Yeah, I'm Brad Walker. They came from originally from Louisiana. I'm right outside of Baton Rouge, is where I'm originally from. We've been here in Wake Forest 9 years now, and been enjoying Wake Forest a good bit. Enjoy the weather, different weather than Louisiana. Louisiana's always hot. Here you have 4 seasons, it gets nice and cool, We have a short drive to the mountains or a short drive to the beach, In Louisiana, it seems like you drive forever and you got Texas, and so Texas or Florida, so it seems like you drive forever. So we enjoy it here in Wake Forest. One of the reasons we came to Wake Forest is because of our transition in business. We ended up selling our software company that we had for 20 years. Me and my wife founded Infinio Software, and had it for about 20 years. I guess we got a little burnout after 20 years of owning the company, ups and downs, things like that. And so we decided that, hey, look, we had a client that made us an offer, for us to come work. My wife decided she would like to work for them, and the offer was good enough to say, hey, let's look at that and try that world, So we took the offer and moved up here to North Carolina. So
okay. What role were you playing in the business?
In Infinio Software, I was the president. My wife was the CEO of the company. So we had close to 50. You kind of go up and down over the 20 years. Our highest peak, we had 50 employees. Lowest peak, we had 9 employees. So it was kind of ups and downs of software based. We did custom software for different industries. No. It wasn't box software. So we would go into a company, we'd evaluate and look at that company and see how we could help them with technology. And so where it's warehouse automation, different kind of websites where the information is filled in and goes all the way to the warehouse at the end. There wasn't a whole bunch of people touching the, data filling for errors and things like that. So we kind of wrote the software per the owner's specs of the business. And so we worked closely with the owners of companies and built those companies up. We started with one company and, I think they were doing $100,000 a year. We came in there, wrote software. And by the time we sold our company, we were at $3 million a year with that company. So we had been with them mostly all 20 years. So they were a client of ours. So it was interesting too that we got to see different industries and how they worked. We wrote software for offshore oil rigs, for medics on offshore oil rigs to put in information about their clients they were working on. If they had an emergency, oil rigs sway in the ocean about a mile difference. So they may not necessarily know exactly where they are. And so we use GPS tracking and software that would tell that medic if he had somebody with a burn on an arm or burn anywhere, where's the nearest burn unit compared to where the oil rig is now. Okay, so the helicopter would then be instructed to take them to this hospital. And it was all based off that individual's insurance and a lot of other factors, how severe the burn was, what type of burn facility was near them, and where the helicopter needed to take them.
Okay.
So it was a specialized software like that, The other specialized software we like to write is for engineers. So engineers which were kind of environmental engineers. We have a Air Force base in Louisiana, Barksdale Air Force Base, where the B-52 bombers are. Okay, well, they practice the bombings. Okay, and so when they bomb certain fields in areas around Barksdale Air Force Base. Well, that ash, okay, is very attractive to a bird. Okay, a very extinct bird. Okay, so you have environmental engineers that go and put in information where these birds have been sighted. Okay, and they use the software that we had developed to determine can the Air Force bomb this field again, okay, because there's an extinct bird, and based off migratory patterns of the bird and the software and everything, it would then say, okay, well this range, this firing range is open, because there's no birds in it, and that was helping an environmental engineer that had to contract with the federal government to kind of track these birds so that they wouldn't blow up these birds, so it was a specialized type field in the software that we had. So that kind of got me where I was interacting with different businesses, looking at what was wrong with the businesses, try to fix it with technology. And so that's kind of where my passion for different helping businesses have come from, is developing that for 20 years. So that the other passion I had is that while we were there, we had a 7-acre office park that we had developed, that we had office buildings where our software company was in one of the buildings there. And so, so just the building of the office park, I was there, I've always had a passion for construction. And so I remember being there. I was probably their worst superintendent, okay, is to be an owner and a superintendent, okay, because you're paying for it and like, what are y'all doing, So this was a 2-story building. It was built very well because it was on the edge of a pond. They didn't want the building sliding in the pond. So I noticed that after they poured the concrete, they started framing, the first floor, and then they were going to get started on the second floor. And I'm sitting here thinking, what's holding that first floor frame to that concrete? Okay. Normally, I told them on a residential house, you have the little screws that, you bolt your first plate down to the concrete, but they did not put screws in this building. And so it got me confused. And so I went and talked to, of course, our contractor and said this. And then next thing you know, they're talking and they got engineers out here. They got architects looking and everything. Well, come to find out, the architect just assumed that the construction company would have put the things there and didn't have to, they didn't call it out on the plans. The engineers didn't call it on the plans. So then they had to refocus and do engineering strapping, drill the holes, do strapping around the whole building for hurricane strapping and all that. And then, of course, I'm like looking at him like, I don't want to see a change order. That wasn't me. I paid all of, for architectural fees and all that stuff. I'm like, I've done my job. All I'm doing is pointing it out. And it's a good thing because I'm like, wouldn't this just slip off the slab?
Right.
If a hurricane had came, So that kind of got my passion to always, be at a construction project, and watch because construction things can get hidden very well. If they would have put up the sidewalls, put up the sheetrock, nobody would have seen that, at the ends. So with that passion of construction, when we came here to North Carolina, a bunch of my friends like, oh, he's retired now. It's like done sold the software company, so he's retired. And so I'm like, I really want something to do. I was only 45, so it's like, what am I going to do? So I got involved here in Rotary. I was involved in Rotary at my company. So I've been in Rotary for about 25 years. And so Rotary helps with connections and get to know people in the community and all that. And so when I came up here, I found the first Rotary Club. I'm like, oh, here's Wake Forest Rotary. It was a little different. My Rotary Club in Louisiana met on lunch on Tuesdays. This one meets nights on Monday nights. Okay. So it was a nighttime club.
Before we go too much into the Rotary, let's add a couple more questions about like how did you get into the software industry? What's your background? What got you interested in that?
So my background, if I go way back, as far as, after high school, I tried college. And I wanted to get into, I was originally had an artistic art scholarship and was more artistic than anything. But then I had a passion for computer graphics back then. But you can imagine, I've been out of the business 30 years now. And before that, college, I graduated in 91. Back then, computers were more like little dot looking like, what you look at, Pac-Man, a long time ago, those type of graphics, so us creating more of the graphics today that exist, that wasn't even thought of back then. And so, I just got into, liking computers, more. And so then I got a little job on the side while I was going to college at a local computer store building computers. Okay, back then we had to build them. It wasn't just like order from Dell,
Yep.
to get them shipped. You had to order the motherboard, the hard drive. So I was building computers, and then all of a sudden networking came out. At first it used to look like cable, cable with little connectors on it. It wasn't the telephone type,
Right.
it wasn't Ethernet. It was more coax. And so learned network technology, how networks work, had the Ethernet come in, and we learned Ethernet. We learned how to network computers back then. And so I was learning more at my job than I was in college. College taught more of a theory on mainframes, and that's what they were trying to teach us, coding of mainframes, and things like that. Well, you don't have a mainframe in your house, So I was learning more. So I tried probably 4 different colleges in Louisiana, and it just wasn't working out for me. Okay, so I, quit college and started working in the computer store even more, and then I ended up getting another job in more of a networking company. That networking company got bought by a data center company, and so as it started growing, basically what I was doing in a networking company was just kind of going opening offices, for that networking company. I'd go sent to Shreveport, other cities around Louisiana, figure out, what's needed as an office, open the office, I was more of called an internal operations director, for that company. And so then upwards, I met my wife, girlfriend back then, and then she had this little computer database company, where she was doing access databases and things like that. And she had some big clients. She was working out of her house. She was also trying to go to LSU, while she was doing this company. She was probably the richest freshman out there because she had all these contracts with energy companies and things like that, doing these databases, designing databases for them. And so she ended up quitting her college to do the database company full time. I think her CPA told her she needed to get married or buy a house, okay, because the taxes were going to kill her. Okay. Yeah. And so, she wasn't getting married. And so she's like, am I going to buy a house? No, I'll start an office. And so, I said, well, I can take 2 weeks off and help you start your office. And so I did. I took 2 weeks off work and I helped her start her office, and then I helped her hire her first employee, and we got her up and running, and so we made a little office for me there so that when I was coming at night, because she'd work all the time, so when I was there at night, I could do some stuff, Well, it got to where a lot of times she was doing software on customers' computers and it was running real slow. And so she's like, Brad, I'm not doing anything different on their system than we're doing here, but for some reason it's running really slow. So I remember the first time going help her, I'm like, okay, well, she takes me on a date. We go on a date and it's to one of her customers' sites, and I'm looking at their server. And of course, being not too technical, but whenever you got a RAID and one of the drives out, the RAID slows down the machine, okay, because it says, oh, one of these drives is bad, okay? So you need to replace it, but in the meantime, we're going to do double duty on the other drive, so it slows the machine down. So I told him, I said, well, you want to talk to your hardware vendor, okay, tell them to come replace one of these drives. And so they're like, oh, good. And so they ended up doing that, and ended up like, oh my God, that worked. But do you know how many times they've been out here fixing the computer, trying to fix the computer, make it go faster? I said, they didn't realize the red light on the front of it. Okay, I was like, it wasn't that hard. Well, then she's like, well, let's offer hardware. And so I came on board, quit my big job to work with her, and then we started the hardware option of the software company. And so then I hired a couple other hardware guys, network technicians. And so that was kind of the start of at the time it was called Aurora Consultants, and nobody knew what we did as Aurora Consultants. And so I'm like, well, let's go ahead and change the name. And so we changed it to Infinia Software. So this is what we do. We use software and we support our customers that have our software versus hardware. And so then you got the established the internet was affordable for people. Back then the internet was just used for the government, and so then it got affordable for people. And so then websites came out. And so we started developing websites. And so you just kind of got into this gambit of doing everything. And so as what we did is the software company was our core. Okay. And so I opened other companies like a graphic design company. And the reason we opened a graphic design company is because when people were putting data into their system that we were designing, they like it to look pretty. Okay. They didn't want like a little screen with just text on it, or like a spreadsheet looking thing. They wanted something that looked kind of, really cool graphics,
Yeah.
And so we hired a couple of graphic designers. Okay. But when they weren't doing, graphics for the software, they were like, what do we do now? So then we started taking graphic design clients, designing business cards, letterhead, and all that type stuff. Then we got into doing marketing type brochures. And then where we specialized was actually convention graphics. So you'd have conventions in New Orleans. And so we design all these graphics that go on the stage and within like registration desks coming in. What are the pull-ups, and all that look like.
Right.
So we designed all that also. So the software, the design company got up to about 20 employees on its own and was, getting just as big as a software company, and so then, we decided that we needed a kind of a person, a manager over our design company. And so that manager came from an editor. She used to be working for a newspaper. And so she was an editor of a newspaper. And so she came help manage our graphic design company. Well, me being involved in the local community in Louisiana, I was more concerned that we had 2 newspapers for the area, and they both delivered news on Thursday, okay, for the week. Okay,
Right.
so, but what happens is council meetings and things that concern people and hot topics, okay, they were done Thursday night. Okay, well, you wouldn't hear about them until the next Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay, so by that time, things have happened all week. And so then my editor at the time, the manager of the graphic design program, well, let's open a newspaper. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do a regular newspaper because they're kind of dying, they're dying off. I said, well, we can do an online newspaper. And so I gave her a challenge. I said, hey, we'll do a Facebook page. Okay. We'll put up the Facebook page for it's called The Creole. It was the name of the online newspaper. And I said, we'll start off with a Facebook page. I said, you get 10,000 followers. I said, we'll open a website and we'll open a true online newspaper. We got like 10,000 the first week.
Oh, jeez.
And so it was like, we ended up before we opened. So we started the online Facebook page in October. And so I said, okay, well, January 2013, we'll open a full-fledged online newspaper. By the time we got there, I think we were at 65,000 followers on Facebook.
Wow.
And
This
so
is what year?
and this is 2013.
Wow.
So we ended up opening as a website where we had a daily email that went out every morning with our articles. But our articles, as you post them on the website, went to Facebook. So we still kept our Facebook going. And so by the time we sold it, we moved here in 2016, and we sold that one. I think we were at 125,000 people getting our emails, daily emails, reading our news. We had been on national news with a story because we were close and local. There was a plant that had an explosion down there in the chemical corridor down there. And so we were able to get there very quickly, as reporters.
Yeah.
So we were actually inside the fence area of the plant when this fire was going and the smoke was going everywhere. So we had video going on, And so we were streaming the Facebook Live at the time, doing some Facebook stuff. Well, the sheriff's department had cut off everybody 5 miles out, and so the reporters, all the other stations were stuck 5 miles out and couldn't get any good video. So we got really good video, and then we basically shared it with all the other news agencies out there about that going on. So that was kind of raised awareness of us, as far as an online newspaper. And so that one was really cool and fun to do. So and then whenever our core software company would have some downtime, I would use the developers to open other things. So we did Rotary attendance software. We did judging software for competitions. We worked on campaign software, type stuff. So there was all these other things going on. that, we had going on at one time. So we had a good bit going on. I had a landscaping company. Okay. The landscaping company came out because I like toys. Being from the country, okay, was raised on a tractor. You cut grass on a tractor. So that's where you were pretty much raised. Well, that was my relaxation from the whole busy business, type stuff going on. I'd go get on a tractor and just sit there and think, like driving on a lawnmower, and just think on a tractor. So I liked buying toys. Like I had a Bobcat, skid steer type thing, of course, it was technically for the, landscape company, but I took it everywhere. When we had a hurricane, I went and helped people, get trees off their houses and stuff. My grandpa had this old mobile home that needed to be moved. I drove that sucker right through that mobile home, and just kind of grabbed the whole thing because my grandpa was like, "What's that little thing gonna do?" I said, "Watch what this little thing does." And we just picked up the whole mobile home and moved it, where he wanted it, and split it up from the steel versus the wood. And just had fun with the equipment. Landscaping company didn't make no money, at all. And so I tell people that all the time: beware opening a landscaping company. It's a lot of work and a lot of type. I was more just the finance and played with the toys. We had a truck, we had a trailer, we had tractors, we had attachments. So it was just kind of a fun thing to do, to have. Since moving here, all my lawn's done by an HOA. I don't cut grass. I do. Have property out in the mountains. We have 10 acres near Banner Elk. And so nice. I bought me a tractor. So the tractor's out there in the mountains, but it's kind of like doing this, and doing this, and there's no flat land to cut on, So it's fun, but it also makes me nervous. Being Louisiana's flat, so being in the mountains is a little nervous when I'm on my tractor. I'm like, okay, I can't lean a certain way or can't go a certain way because I'll roll off the cliff,
Get you a Ventrex.
Yeah. And then, so I'm experimenting with building a house down there. We've had blasting. We built a road, got underground electricity put in, so we, eventually we'll have a cabin out there. Nice. There's a whole building there aspect. And so my goal was to, build short-term real estate there. And so do some short-term rentals out there. Well, as that was progressing, my daughter loves the beach area, and so I ended up having alerts out there for anything that popped up. And we had this little condo popped up in the on the mainland side that overlooked the Currituck Sound, that overlooked the OBX. And so it was a really good deal. We were scheduled to go to the mountains, and I'm like, hey, look, I told my wife, I said, look, this thing popped up. I can't believe it. I'd make an offer right now on it, okay, because it's a good deal. I said, but I just don't trust the pictures and all that. I said, we need to go down to the beach and look at it. And so we moved our vacation 2 days to go down to the beach, take a look at this little condo. It was really everything we had seen on the photos and the price. And so I'm like, okay, so I bought it. And so now we have this condo on the beach. And so it's been doing really well on the short term. It's called Grandy Cove. That's what we named it because it's in Grandy. It's kind of like Grandy Cove. And so having that's been pretty cool because we go down to the beach once a month. So I'm like, so that's my first short-term rental. And so in the mountains, we have the 10 acres. And so we're going to split three 3-acre lots. And so do 3 of them out there. And so that's kind of my developing side of my business when I moved here. So I have aspects and things going on all over. Everybody's like, oh,
retired.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in business, you don't necessarily retire, especially if you have this entrepreneurship, spark, you don't. So, what kind of led me to launch, with all this background, is that when we tried the losses with the landscaping, and then there was other businesses we tried that did not work. And so back then you spend money for that. You spend 20,000 here, 100,000 here. I think overall, me and my wife probably lost about 400,000 in the 20 plus years trying stuff on businesses. And so,
and that's the thing that people don't see. Like, oh, he's so lucky, he wins at everything, he's doing all these things. They don't see that downside, like when you're losing those.
Yeah, there are more, and that's what I try to talk to my students about at launch is that it's not always up. There's some down, I've hired family members, okay, in our company, okay, that we no longer speak to, and they no longer speak to us as a family, and that's been like 15 years, okay, and it's because of what happened in the business, and when you let go and you fire a family member, okay, they don't want to talk to you at family events, they don't want to see you, so it just kind of, there's some things that's not always, hunky dory in business, there's schedules and events you miss with kids' events because you got to work. You got to do it. Why you got to work? Because that's your livelihood. You expect your kids to be at additional events, okay? But you may need to work for this event. So owning businesses is beneficial, but it's also got its risk. And so we were trying to make sure in launch, like the first 3 classes, okay, is telling them everything about business, and make sure you really want to do this.
Let's pause on launch just for a second, just because, I don't know, like I just learned about the program and I'm sure a lot of our viewers don't know about it either. So I want to make sure that we're going in the right order so that we can really explain this program because it sounds absolutely amazing. The only other background question I had for you is like your real estate license. When did you get that and why?
So I got that here when I got up to North Carolina.
Okay.
My wife was working, and she's like, "What you gonna do?" And at first, I was supposed to take care of the kids, bring them to school. They were in private school here, and so we had found Thales Academy, and so I had to carpool them and all that. And so I was carpooling them, and they adjusted a lot better than we thought. Okay, and so a lot quicker than we thought, And so she's like, "Oh, you need something to do." I'm like, all right, what am I going to do? And so I'm like, let me get my real estate license because I always love the real estate side of our business, the building and the buying and the lands and all that. I like negotiation, like negotiating with people, And so I said, well, let me try and get my real estate license. So I went through all the classes you had to do and then took my real estate license exam, passed it, and then took the post-licensing stuff. And then I set up at first I started with Keller Williams because they had the best education side.
Okay.
And so I went with Keller Williams and I learned all the education I could get on real estate, on sales and everything. And so, but what happens is they're not that great on commission side. Okay. And so once I learned everything and then decided that, oh, well, there's a lot of fees, a lot of commission and all that. Let me just kind of step back and go, I had, residential, I was doing residential in the beginning. Residential is all emotional. I mean, everything about it is emotion. Okay, with the people, the feeling of the house, the location, is this good for my kids? Is it good for a backyard? A lot of emotion. Okay. Well, as a business owner, I'm more analytical and need to figure out, like me, it's like, is this a good deal for you as a house-wise? How much equity you gonna have in it? And all that type of stuff. And so I moved to the commercial realm, because there was one lady I went and showed a house to that met every criteria that person wanted. You go in there, we look at the house, a beautiful area, beautiful yard, everything she wanted. She didn't like the color of the rooms inside. Okay, and I'm like, okay, well, we can get that painted.
We can change that.
$2,000. And I could probably get you a credit. Okay, to do $2,000 to change it. Okay, and she's like, no, I just got a bad vibe on the inside because of the color. I'm like, okay, you need to find another realtor. Okay, and I'll refer you to somebody. Okay, but this is not going to work. Okay, and I think that was the last tour I ever gave of a house. Okay, it was that one. And then I moved to the commercial realm. I'm like, how can I get into commercial? And so I got into commercial realm and started working with a good guy here, Roger Scott, with North Wake, commercial here. I chose him in real estate because he had been here forever. He had started off the whole Heritage, neighborhood.
Right.
With the owner of the Heritage neighborhood, Andy. And so he had been here a while. He had contacts and everything. And I'm like, oh, well, that'd be good. And so he taught me the ropes of commercial here in Wake Forest. And so I've been doing commercial real estate in Wake Forest since, probably we moved here in 2016, probably 2018,
Okay.
Been doing commercial real estate here and enjoy it. I enjoy it, but I look more on the business side, buy side, help local businesses try to find space here, there's not a whole lot of space.
No.
Okay, especially now. So I'm not doing a whole lot, other than telling businesses you got to come up with a different way, or you got to find something, or it's going to be expensive. Because the only thing really available is some of these new strip centers, that of course are getting high rents right now. Because they're new, they're nice, everybody loves them, wants to get in them, and so when something, believe it or not, fails here, okay, I mean, it's probably already leased before that person's even out of that door.
Yep.
So you got to be on things kind of quick, in the commercial realm here. And so trying to find business for small businesses is really hard. You would have a lot more small businesses here in Wake Forest if we had more inventory.
Yeah.
We just don't have the inventory. And so that's got me, really passionate about real estate. And so
Okay.
I also, when being bored, I got my notary. So I'm a notary. I'm also an e-notary because I didn't know what e-notary was all about. And I'm like, oh, let me go take the class. And so now I know e-notary is not doing it remote. Okay. It's basically the documents that you're signing is on an iPad, but I'm still here in person signing. Okay. You're just signing electronic documents.
Yep.
And so a lot of people get confused about that. They're like, hey, I'm up in California. Can you notarize something for me? I'm like, no, I can't. You got to physically be present here in front of me so that we can get the notarization done. Now I can do it, on DocuSign, but, the mortgage company sends the docs via an iPad. You sign via an iPad, so you're not actually signing physical paper documents. So e-notary, got my e-notary, I decided I wanted to learn more about construction. So I went to Wake Tech and took construction management classes. And so I almost have an associate's degree in construction management from Wake Tech. But it got me my OSHA 30 card, so I got all my OSHA safety card and everything needed to go into a construction site, with no problem. So, I'm big on education too. Like if I don't know something, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to research it. I'm going to go, and figure it out.
But not necessarily like a 4-year degree education. There's so many other ways to get educated.
Yes, there are so many. And I do tell that, I do tell that to people that, college is not always. In fact, one of the things I say a lot of times with MBAs are hard in my program, in launch program. And they're like, why? I'm like, because MBAs have gone through the schooling and they have been told the risk of business. Okay. When you know all the risk of business, you're less likely going to jump off that cliff and open one. Okay. You're more going to maybe buy one that's existing and modify it and change it and make it work, or run an existing business for somebody. But you actually starting an MBA, actually starting a business from scratch is very rare.
Yep.
Because they do know the risk. That's what's exciting. In real estate, I have, like I said, I love construction. I'm currently probably fixing to take the NASLA test, which is the builder's license, to get a builder's contractor's license. I've taken it once, didn't pass it, missed it by 5 points. It's a hard test.
Yeah.
It's open book, but it's open book of 30 books.
Yep.
Okay. So, and it's 4 hours. Okay, long, and so you got 4 hours to go through 30 books to figure out your answer to your question. Okay. And so just practicing is what I've been doing and practicing. So I'll probably take it in the next month or so.
Those courses are great. I forget the name of the company we used, but those courses, they teach you how to take the test.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing. Like, yes, it's open book, but how do you find that information?
And I've been going through one. There's a big one here, I believe, that a lot of people here in North Carolina use. And so I've been going through that, and I've taken his webinars and all that. And so I've been doing, like he said, practicing, reading the books, so that you can kind of recall where you've seen that question from.
Yeah, because 4 hours seems like a long time, but I use every second of every license test I've taken. It's just down to the wire.
So hopefully next time I'll pass it with no problem.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm used to, when we had the software company, and I would tell our developers, look, we need this Microsoft certification to be able to do this certain thing. Like, hey, go take the test. Well, I haven't studied. I'm like, okay, but take the test to see what's on it so that you know what to study.
Yep.
I said, and 2, you may just happen to pass it. Okay, when you get there. And, really 50-50. Some of them did pass it and didn't have to study afterwards because they've already passed it because they've been doing it for so long. They're like, oh, well, I knew all this,
Yeah.
And so that's what me going on my construction management classes now and all that. So I kind of know a lot of it, that some of the answers I know and didn't have to go look in books, which helps tremendously.
Yeah. They always say, don't answer it the way you know it. Answer it the way the book says.
And I will tell you this, and doing the real estate license, okay, owning a business, okay, did not help at all, okay, for the real estate license. In fact, it confused it, okay, because when I was reading some of these questions, I'm like, well, technically it could be two of these answers, okay? And the teacher, when I was doing that, and she was kept telling me, like, Brad, you need to go the simplest answer. Okay, don't think complicated, because me, being owning a business, I had the complicated answer. Okay, there's a complicated answer and there's a simple answer on the test. Okay, but technically both of them are correct. Okay, it's just what are the circumstances behind this question? And so it kind of messed me up when business owner trying to go take one of these tests. They're geared to people out of students that are coming out of class. And don't have that experience and knowledge of what if, type thing.
That working knowledge. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm glad we dove into your background. It's like that was a lot of information to unpack, and we could talk about that for hours. But the reason I brought you in today was because of this launch program, and I want to learn more about it. But let's start first with the Rotary Club. Like, what is the Rotary Club?
So Rotary Club is a service organization by business owners, and so business owners have gotten, so Rotary's probably 100 and something years old now. Our club's going on like 80 years old, pretty soon, fixing to go on 80, maybe 85. Wait. We actually go on 90 in 2027 in our club here in Wake Forest. And so, very established club. It's business owners getting together that want to do something for the community, and it started as a group of business owners just kind of sipping coffee, going to coffee, talking about what's going on in the community and trying to help. And so that's basically what we do here in Wake Forest is a bunch of business owners trying to get together and raise some money to help, do a baseball stadium, type thing, or announcers box like we did at, I'm going to say Flannery Park. We built the announcers box. We do the Cars and Carnivores festivals in June, and that money goes to pay off debt for medical debt. So we got with Wake Med and said, hey, do y'all have a problem with past due people, having past due that have cancer-related treatments? And they said, yes, we do. We have a lot of past due. And so well, we'd like to help you out with that. Okay. And so we basically help take care of anybody that's got over 180 days of past due debt with Wake Med that has cancer-related treatments, And so we've taken care of a lot of that. We work out a little thing with Wake Med, to make sure that it's wiped in out the correct. We don't see patient information. All we see is a number, and an amount, And so we get together and say, hey, we have $20,000. And so we give them $20,000 that we raised from the Cars and Carnivores Festival. They wipe out the debt. They send out letters to their patients saying, hey, the Rotary Club's taking care of your past due debt, for you. And if you'd like to thank them, give them a call. And so we've had several calls. It's kind of, when I get a call, somebody's crying on the phone, I usually know what it's about. Okay. And say, hey, are you okay? And they're like, yeah, I want to thank y'all for paying off my debt. It's a relief, Some have told me that they've been cured and some have told me they're not, and so it's really heartbreaking, story, but it's also for just the 27587 zip code. So it's a direct impact to here in Wake Forest. So it's not like we're paying somebody off in Cary or Apex, it's here in Wake Forest. And so we do local projects. We also do dialysis machines. We bought 3 dialysis machines for India, this past year. And so we've done dental chairs in Rwanda. So we help from the world, but we also help locally. What I tell a lot of people is if you got some kind of mission that you have, that you have internally, you want to help kids, you want to help veterans, you want to help different aspects, join your local Rotary Club, present that idea to them. Okay. And most probably you have an engine, okay, that will help come up with the funding, okay, and create that and help, make you feel like you've taken care of that in the community. that's what we really utilize Rotary for. And then you start becoming family with them. We meet every week. We do 2 meetings a week at the Forks. And then we do a social somewhere else around town or at our member's house. And then we do a service project, usually at the Forks or somewhere else, where we're packing bags. We just recently packed school bags. We did 150 school bags, for Hope House. And Hope House here is local, that they gave out 400 school bags, and we were one of the organizations that gave them 150, we do different letters to the veterans thanking them. We do, Halloween trick-or-treat bags that we're working on in a couple of weeks. That'll go to the Boys Girls Clubs or possibly a kindergarten, first grade class, type stuff. So we do a lot of small projects along with some larger projects. We do scholarships to Wake Forest high school students, to Roseville high school students. We sponsor Interact clubs, which is like Rotary in high school. So we sponsor Interact Club in Wake Forest and Roseville. Each has close to 25, 30 students in it, and what they do is they kind of come and help us with our projects, so they'll be at our meetings, and basically attend our meetings. We hear from speakers all the time, whether it be, we're not political, but we hear from representatives on how the government's going, or local, state, we invite people to come tell us how things are going. We hear from other nonprofits, like Rise from Hunger or Hunger Rise, this past week that we had. We knew their original name, I think it was Hope for Hunger or something like that, original, and then they've changed their name recently. And so they came and spoke to us about it, and told us about, hey, look, they're doing a food pack on October 4th, and so they come help us, come join us. And so we got members going on October 4th there. So it's a really good organization to feel good that you're making money in a business, okay, and you want to give it back to the community. And instead of just giving money to people in the community, you can do a project, and you come in and work, volunteer and help with a project or donate, So we have some members that attend and we have some members that just donate.
Yeah.
They're like, Brad, call us when you got a project and need some money here. And they're official members, but, we don't see them very often. We have some members that just come for service projects, meetings, and that's it. And of course, we have some members just come to the socials too, just come and have the social. So we have different types of members that we come, we have husband and wives, that are members. And so the whole couple comes, so, we have a good mix, some people thought, Rotary is an old man's club, and yes, we have old men in it, okay, but we also have diversity now. We have a lot of women in our club. We have a lot of different races in our club, a lot of different ages, Me being 52, I'm kind of the middle now. I used to be the youngest, okay, and so now we have younger than me now, so we've kind of diversified our club here in Wake Forest to have different, types of people. Like, I was counting the number of women and men in our club, and we ended up having more women in our club meeting than men the other day. So I'm like, okay, we're adjusting. We're not like that image, about an old man's club.
Right.
So now we're trying to bring in more business owners in our club, because being an old club, we have a lot of people that's retired. Everybody thought I was retired too in the club, but we have a lot of those that are retired business owners but still doing things,
Right.
So it's a good networking, I had first got into Rotary in 2000 when we had our software company. So you can imagine we have the software company. We're trying to get out there and get the word of mouth, what's going on. What better place to go and be a member of that has the sheriff, that has the mayor, that has several other members in it down in Louisiana? And I'm like, oh, well, that's a good club, and so I found, and back then you really had to be invited to the club. You couldn't just show up and say, hey, I want to be a member. You had to be invited by another member to the meeting, okay? And so I got invited by a friend of mine that did apparel, like logo shirts and all that we use for our company. She's like, hey, I'm in Rotary, like, let me invite you. And I'm like, okay. And so I got there invited, and then I got into that club, and then sure enough, we wrote software for the sheriff, and had a big client as a sheriff, writing their internal software for jail and all that type of stuff. So it got us clients and networking by being in the Rotary, meeting different types of people, which was really cool. And then I ended up being the secretary for that club for 10 years. And so now I'm treasurer on this one and executive secretary. Well, we call me chief of staff, is basically what they call me now. And so I handle a little bit of everything in Rotary, our club here. So
we hope you're enjoying the interview so far. Thank you so much for watching. We feel so fortunate to be able to book such amazing guests as we're getting this thing going. One thing you can do to help us out is just engage with these videos. That will get it seen by a lot more people. We can spread the story so much further if you just give us a quick like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Anything you feel comfortable with would be a huge help. Enjoy the rest of the interview. So you said you don't have to be invited now. Like, what are the requirements, or like, how do you join?
Really, you kind of come to the meeting, and we actually we pay for the dinner. So come and have dinner on us. So you come Mondays at 6:30. Meeting starts at 7. Have dinner, get to know us, see if you like the club. Then you file an application. We review the application. And then we discuss it among our members, and then we invite you into as membership into the club. There's not really a per se, other than we like to have somebody that's business oriented, somebody that has a passion for doing that, or coming in. We don't want somebody just coming and they're going to pay dues and that's it. We want somebody that's going to get involved. And so we kind of look at, what's the passion of this individual coming in. And that's kind of what we're looking for when we have members.
Is there any kind of like faith-based requirements, anything like that?
We have different religious type people in we have, I want to say we're down to, we did at one time have 4 pastors in our club. Okay, each from a different church. Okay. So there wasn't any faith-based, requirement on Rotary. That's what I said. It's kind of more of a business requirement. Like we'd like them to be in business. They'd like to, being an employee of a company gets kind of hard if you don't have the ability to say, hey, I need to take off to do this service project, or do this, so business owners have more flexibility on their schedule. So you can really go and, do things service oriented, or say, hey, I'm a sponsor, or hey, I'm going to donate. Being an employee in a corporate world is not necessarily going to be good to go to Rotary, because we do some things during the day, and then and we meet at night, but we have to do certain things during the day. And so if you have a corporate job, they allow you off and they allow you that type of thing, then we welcome them also. We don't want to say that. But that's one of the questions that we ask when we look at the application. Do you have some flexibility with your schedule, to be able to do things? So, but we usually know that by the time, because we let people come for 3 meetings, and then say, hey, you going to join, type thing. And so we've gotten to know them pretty well in the 3 meetings, because when we see somebody new in our meetings, there's always members that'll go talk to them, so they're not just sitting off at a table by themselves, observing. Right. It's like somebody's going to ask you a question. Somebody's going to sit down and talk to you in this club. Just because, too, we have nosy members, too, so they like to know what's going on and meet people themselves. So,
sure. How's the membership these days? Like you said, a lot of people think of it as like an old man's club, and there's all these different organizations, and then some of them are getting bad publicity online, and that's where a lot of the younger generation gets all their info. So, how's the membership? Have you seen a decrease, or is it hard to bring in new members?
Oh, we're actually increasing.
Yeah.
So we're actually increasing. I guess after COVID, we were probably at 30, 32. We normally stay in the 40s. It's what we've stayed in all these years. But after COVID, we had dropped down to 30. And so now we're up to 45, members right now. So, and that growth has been within the last 2 years, that we've grown. And so, we actually survived COVID by doing a hybrid, so of course you had some people in business. When you're dealing with business owners, you're dealing with conservatives, and some liberals, some majority conservative. And so they were all like, "Hey, I want to meet," and then you had some people, "No, we can't meet yet, we can't meet because of COVID, and all this." So we set up a hybrid environment. So we at our meetings we have two big screens and a camera, and so we paid for the audio visuals for Forks, okay, in their meeting room, okay. So and we allow other organizations to use it. And so we paid for that. And so now we have a hybrid. So if you can't make a meeting at night in person, you can go online and catch it somewhere else. So we have people that are traveling, that'll come in, log in and kind of interact with us on there. And so when we have a speaker, they get to hear the speaker and everything. And so the camera shows the room like they're in the room with us, type thing. And so we did that all through COVID, and that helped tremendously. So we went to at one time having 5 people in the meeting, okay, and 40 of them up on the screen, okay, to now I think we're down to maybe like less than 5 in a meeting now, everybody else, the 40s in the room.
Okay.
So you can kind of see how that shifted, but the minute there's another scare, there'll be more on the screen than there'll be, in the room. So we adapted, and that's one thing you look at business also is you adapt and change. If you still want to stay the same, you're not going to survive, and that's what I think Rotary noticed early on, with the old man's image. They're like, oh, well, you need to get more women in the club. You need to adapt to the times, and so that's easier for a business club, than it is for a different type of organization, volunteer organization. So,
okay. So I guess you were the president at one point?
Yes. We have a different president every year for our club. And then that president usually has some kind of mandate for the year. Okay. So mine was entrepreneurship. I was like, I want to do something entrepreneurship locally. We had done the previous presidents before me had done some international stuff, so it seemed like we were doing a lot of international. So I'm like, I'd like to focus locally, and so my big thing is business. So I want to do some entrepreneurship. So this will kind of roll into the launch program. So what happens is that during my presidency, or the year before my presidency, another Rotarian in the Raleigh Club, the North Raleigh Club, Matthew Kane, he ended up starting Launch Raleigh, okay, and he was like, Brad, he came to both our club and said, hey, look, I'm thinking about starting this Launch Raleigh. Here's what it's about. I've kind of taken on, there's a Detroit type program out there that we can do, kind of base it off of. And so he's like, but to get it started, we need like $1,500 to get it started. So our club seeded the money for the Raleigh Club in the beginning, and we gave them $1,500, And so in that, I was a mentor and kind of on his board down there in Raleigh, and really helped focus the whole program and really set what the program's all about, And so then I loved it so much. I'm like, oh yeah, let me open a Launch Wake Forest. And Matt was like, well, let's do 1 year of Launch Raleigh to make sure we honored everything out before we start opening these other ones,
Right.
And I said, that's fine. So after the year, I was a mentor for the Raleigh for a year. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to open mine. Really, it was kind of like the mayor and then the director of the chamber, Ann Welton at the time, both came to me. It's like, Brad, we just seen this awesome program in Raleigh. I said, and they told us we need to talk to you. Okay, I'm like, yeah. I said, it's like, we want to do one here in Launch Wake Forest. Like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I said, I'm gonna do it in the. I think at the time, I'm like, I'm gonna do it in the. I'm gonna do it in the spring. And they were like, well, this is like summertime. And like, can we do it in the fall? I'm like, I guess we could. I can move it up. And so we went ahead and started moving it up and getting it rushed out, to kind of like, let's start it, and so the town gave us a little seed money for it, and then the chamber helped us with finding students at the time, and so we ended up starting it, based off of the cooperation between town, and then we ended up having Wake Tech. Wake Tech provides the instructor, so they pay for the instructor for us. And so the town's money, we provide dinner. Okay. So it's a weekly class, 13 weeks, total, 10 weeks of actual education class. And so we pay for dinner. So the students come in there, I call them students. And that's what's funny that I'm not getting used to is calling these business owners students. Okay. And so the first year we had the majority of the downtown. So all the downtown businesses wanted to come into this program. And so I met a lot of business owners here. And so they've come in the program. They come in about 5:15, 5:30. They have dinner. We provide dinner for them. And then 5:30 to 6, we usually have a speaker from around town. I try to get, speakers. I use speakers as a networking stepping stone for the students. Okay, so like the students are coming into Wake Forest. They may not know the mayor. They may not know a CPA, a banker, a lawyer here in Wake Forest. Okay, well, those are the type of speakers I have come to launch. Okay, so that they get to meet them. I even provide them with a little bio sheet, like what I provide on me. Each speaker has a bio sheet along with their cell number and their phone, their address and all that, so that they can contact them if they need a CPA, a lawyer, or a mayor for something, so they get the contacts when they're there in the beginning. So that speaker usually speaks from 5:30 to 6, 5:30 to 6. And then 6, we start the education part of the class, and so we use the Kaufman curriculum. I don't know if you're familiar with Kaufman. They've been around a long time in business education. I use it kind of as a reference, but a lot of what we discuss in class, I do not call up the Kaufman and watch the little videos on Kaufman or read the text, in class. We actually talk about real world scenarios, like actually real life, what would happen with their business, like tonight's class is SWOT analysis. Okay. So we're going to do SWOT analysis on each company there. And they're going to come up and present their SWOT, to their results from their analysis. We're doing a competitive advantage where we analyze their company against another company that's competitive, and what's the difference. Like I said, the Kaufman and the launch class is a way to think about if you want to open a business or if you have a business, okay, and you want to start something new. Okay, it teaches you a thought process, okay, of how to think about it before you start it. For example, I've tried a couple of businesses, tried to purchase a couple of franchises, and so I sit there and think the first thing we teach in launch is like entrepreneurial lifestyle. Okay, is this the lifestyle I want? Okay, we teach exit strategy or first. Okay, and everybody's like, "Why are you teaching? I ain't even started this yet." And you're talking about how am I exit it? I'm like, well, that's how you're going to build this business. Okay, and then you got to think about it. It's like if I own this business, like when I owned my software company, I naturally thought I was going to give it to my kids and my kids going to run it. But I don't know if my kids liked how they saw us when we were constantly working, constantly doing things. Okay. I don't think my kids want to work that hard. Okay. And so if they don't involve the kids, well, don't leave the business to the kids. Okay. Because the kids are not going to want it. You can't just do this business and say, oh, I'm going to hand it over to kids. And kids don't know anything about the business. Okay. Because they're basing their opinion off of how you reacted on dealing with customers, dealing with money, dealing with employees, okay, which is not always pleasant, okay.
Especially in your home.
In your home,
behind the scenes.
I mean, in your home, you're talking about, it may not always be good that you're talking about the business, and so you always think about the exit. So if I'm gonna sell it, I got to do this, and this, okay. So I tell them in the entrepreneurship lifestyle this is the type of lifestyle you want. Is has this lifestyle that your spouse wants? Is this the lifestyle your kids want? Okay. Will your lifestyle be better at another job? Okay. So like when I'm evaluating a franchise, do I want to buy this franchise? I'll say I looked at the Code Ninja franchise. Okay. And I was like, let me evaluate Code Ninja franchise. The only ones available were in the Virginia area. I like the model and everything. And so I'm like, Virginia. It's like, I don't know if I can manage a Virginia from Wake Forest. I don't know if I really want to move from Wake Forest, And I said, well, let me continue looking at it a little bit. I said, right now, my lifestyle, I don't know if I really care for that lifestyle yet. Okay. I'm having to travel to Virginia all the time, and do that. And so then I started looking at the books, and looking at things, and evaluating it more, that to be profitable, you really need to own 3 of them. You need to own, more than one so that you can utilize your employees at multiple locations. Okay. Because that's the most biggest expense in that business. And so then I'm like, I don't know if I really wanted 3 of them, and so you evaluate that, and you evaluate your lifestyle, and we'll see if that's what you want. And then I ended that one quick and said, no, I was like, that's not what I want. Okay. I'm at a point now after, having a business so much that I necessarily don't want employees. So my businesses that I'm evaluating right now are stuff that don't have employees, or maybe AI employees. Okay. And so, that's the type of businesses I'm evaluating now, because employees have really burnt me out, and so I have a different lifestyle now. And so I tell them also to evaluate your lifestyle at different phases. It may change, what you want, and so that's kind of where we start, and then we move to, do you solve a problem? Okay. Like if I'm opening a business, do you actually solve a problem? And some of the people in my class are like, I don't know if I solve a problem. I sell a product. I'm like, does your product solve the problem? I don't know if it actually solves a problem. They may like to have it, they don't need it, and I'm like, okay, well then how do we get that focus on solving some kind of problem? Because that's going to be an easier sell than just like, don't know if it's going to, like, well, how are you going to sell it? And so we start talking about that. And so as you learning these classes, you're learning a thought process, so that when I'm thinking like want to open another product, I'm like, oh, now I know that solves a problem. So maybe we'll do this company right here. Now once I find that, I'm like, oh, what's it going to take to do this? And so as we continue on, we'll learn about cost, on how much it costs to do it, how much profit you make off of it. The number one thing I find when we start talking about cost is you'll say, well, how much does this product cost? And like, oh, it costs about $10. Okay. And I said, and they're like, oh, that's materials. It just costs you 3 hours to build it. Okay. With $10 worth of material. Okay. Well, how much money you want to make this year? And so like, oh, well, I'm looking at making 80 to 100,000. I'm like, well, divide that by 2080 and you got your hourly rate. Okay. Now take that hourly rate and times 3, because it took you 3 hours to put it on. Oh my God, this is like $60. It cost me $60. I was selling it for 20. Yeah. I'm like, you just lost money. Okay. You need to be selling it for more than you put in it. Otherwise, you need to find a manufacturer that can build it with just, minimum, and so hence why you find problems in the U.S. with businesses, because the cost of the labor is expensive. Okay. Now, if they can move it to some kind of robotic type of operation, which you'll see like videos in Apple and all that, where they got robots building these phones and all that. Why? Because that robot doesn't cost you per hour. Okay.
And it doesn't need brakes.
And it doesn't break, and it continues on. Okay. So therefore, yes, you can figure the cost as the material. Okay. And not necessarily labor. Okay. Where labor becomes expensive, hence why people go to China. That same labor that you're thinking that, you want to make 100,000. Well, he's hopefully only wants to make 30 a year. Okay. Because he can live on 30 a year in China. Okay. Well, that's going to be a lot different rate, for building it and assembling it. And that's why, iPhones, if they weren't done robotically, they sent them over to China to assemble it. Everybody's like, oh, iPhone's a Chinese product. I'm like, have you really looked at it? All the parts are manufactured here robotically. Okay. The only thing they're doing in China is assembling the case. Okay. And putting it together. Okay. Because they needed, manual hand labor to do it. I said they had not developed a way to robotically assemble it together. Okay. That's what Ford did. Ford assembled cars together, and now they got robotics assembling cars because the labor was. Okay. So a lot of people are like, oh, well, robotics and now AI are taking jobs. Okay. Well, you look more at, what do you have to change? And that's the issue, is a lot of people don't want to change. Okay. Well, now, if I learn AI and how to give it instructions, okay, the thing about those robots and the thing about that AI, okay, it needs instructions. Okay. Just sits there. If it ain't got no instructions, it just sits there. Okay. You have to know how to instruct it, AI coming out. So we do utilize AI throughout our class here. So every class, I give them an AI tool at the end of it. I give them a demo of an AI tool. Okay. And you just see their faces when they see the demo of this AI tool, what it can do. Okay. Like they're like, I had no idea. I'm using some really advanced AI stuff. Okay. for a lot of the companies I'm evaluating, and so I'm very close to not really needing employees for majority of what I'm doing software wise and all that. In fact, I don't use developers to develop the software I'm working on now. I use AI. And so, but the issue is I need a good product manager. Okay. A good product manager will go in and say, this is what we need this to do. Okay. So basically a product manager is doing that today. Okay. But they're sending it to humans, okay, the code, okay. The humans are arguing with them saying, oh, I don't know if we can do this, okay, because I get that a lot from developers. I don't think you can do this. And I had to go show them, look, it's being done. Yep. Okay, so I know it can be done. And so they're like, oh, and then they want to argue or they get a bug or they don't notate it correctly on what they were doing, Now that project manager can feed instructions to a screen saying, I want the product to do this. I want this feature. I want this. I upload a screenshot of what I drew on a napkin. Okay. And then bam, it's developed in about maybe 10 minutes. Okay. The little code goes through and writes all the code, looks at it. I did that for a sample product I'm working on. And then I had somebody that was experiencing code, look at the code on the back end and like, this is cleaner than I get anywhere, okay, from developers here in the U.S. or developers overseas, okay. This code I can use. I can deploy this on a cloud environment and get you up and running immediately, and so I'm like, okay, I think I'll continue using this, okay. And so, but what happens is my employee now has changed where they need to know how to give it instructions. I know a lot of people use ChatGPT, biggest AI out there, okay, and they go in there and say, hey, write me a paragraph or something, That's not the right instructions really to give it. Okay. You got to tell it a story of what you're looking at, what you're looking for. You got to build a history. Okay. You got to train the AI, just like you trained your kids on how to write numbers, how to add and subtract. You got to train an AI. Okay. Once you have the AI trained and you filled it with enough information, whether it's your website information that you got, your marketing information, then it becomes a really powerful tool to give you whatever you want. Okay. And so, I'm learning how to give it instructions, and a lot of times some of that's code wise, like in other words, telling it code or telling it the way you're describing a feature. Okay. So the way you're thinking and the way you're becoming intelligent changes compared to I'm just putting this together and putting this phone together. You're like, oh, well, I got to tell that AI he needs to reach underneath. They need to add the cover first. They need to add the inside, So it's more of a thinking thing than it is a physical thing. In the AI environment.
Yeah.
So employees will change. And so that's what I'm teaching businesses, okay, to understand, okay, that you still want employees, okay, but you want employees now that can give instructions to AI. My daughter is in marketing at NC State, and I keep asking her, I said, are you using AI tools at NC State? She's like, yes, Daddy. They're teaching us that type of stuff. I said, good, because nobody's going to want to pay you to design a graphic for the business. Okay. They're going to hire you saying, hey, can you instruct our graphic AI interface? Okay. To give us the graphics we need. Okay. To be able to marketing campaign. Okay. That's what they're going to be asking for by the time she graduates, which is only in a couple of years. And so I wanted to make sure that she was getting the right education at NC State, and they've been really ahead of the game over there at NC State. And I've been really impressed over there.
I know it's been real controversial that a lot of universities aren't letting the kids use it.
Correct. You see like last year, you've seen all these articles about, oh, this kid's cheating. They're using AI and they're cheating, It's like, was it really cheating if they're instructing it to get really cool? Okay. And they're getting really good. Okay. Now that did cause a little bit of education for them kids because them kids will figure it out. Okay. There's now programs that will evaluate your work. Okay. And tell you whether or not they've been written by an AI. Okay. And so the kids are using that. Okay. So they're finding out ways to get around all that. Okay. Well, that's just educating the kids on how to use AI, okay, because it's making them smarter, okay, to get around the rules and regulations of school. So me as being outside the university and the business, I'm like, that's pretty smart, okay? Yeah. I'm not in that box. And sometimes the colleges and all that in the education society, okay, get in that box, okay, and like there's the strict rigor, okay? Yep. But when you get out into business, that's kind of like when we teach at lunch, and it's like, what's this fair? What's this not fair type stuff. I'm like, your business, okay? You have an ethic, yes, to hold, okay? But there's, not fair and not fair. Don't whine about your competitors doing something, because you can do it too. Okay. What you're whining about is you didn't think of it. Okay. That's what you're whining about. Okay. I said, so don't whine, change it and do it better. I said, the one thing that you get on advantage over corporations is you can move faster. Okay. Corporation, like big Microsoft, Google, Oracle. Okay. It takes time for them to do things. Okay. And they slow. Okay. They slow to adopt. They slow to add an update or something. A small company can go in and make a change and like, oh, I didn't like that. Well, I'll make a change again and to market really quick. Okay. Yeah. So I can beat them to market and sell. And a lot of times when people buy that product, they don't want to change it just for another one unless there's something super better, like an iPhone. Nobody wants to change an iPhone unless there's really something better out there, and there's Android, there's Samsung, there's all that out there. But people still like me. I like the iPhone and use the Apple products because when I put something on this iPhone, it's on my iPad at night. It's on my Apple MacBook when I'm working. Yep. I just like the togetherness of everything where I can find it. And it's integrated. So when I get a text message, it's on all three devices. So I don't miss a text message. And that's more of a business mentality for me because you always got to be connected when you're in business. You never know when you have a client. So now I have an AI that's a customer service that was really cool because I'm working on a concept that the AI is the customer service. Okay. And so it's got a knowledge base. So all that planning I put into a piece of software for it to write the code. Okay. I take that same software and load it into an AI knowledge base. Okay. For my customer support. Okay. So now customer support, when you go and chat, you're chatting with a bot. Okay. But that bot might actually be smarter than a representative because it's looking at all the knowledge-based stuff, all the marketing materials, all the technical specs and everything. And it's going to answer your question based off what it finds in all that material. Yep. Okay. Do you think a customer rep has read all that material, all those legal agreements, all those other, technical specs? They have not. Okay. And so they usually have to ask somebody else or let me ask a supervisor or something like that. So this chat just kind of answers the questions for people on chat. And then when it gets something stumped, like it's stumped, it'll say, hey, hold on one second. And they'll send a text message to your phone or your owner's phone or an actual email. Okay. Right. Saying, hey, you need to help this or if you're available now, can you log on? And so then, it basically says, oh, I'm transferring you to a rep. Okay. And then you're basically at a small company, you're dealing, probably typing with the owner, Yeah. But it helped that owner kind of solve like 20 of the questions and only gave it one, and dealt with one versus sitting there answering 20 and just constantly being on customer support, Yeah. So customer support type stuff is going that way. I have learned that one keyword when you're dealing with custom online stuff is agent. Okay. You'd like to talk to an agent. Okay. That usually gets you a human person because they know the word agent. Some people will use like representative. I want to talk to a person. Right. It doesn't know that. Okay. If you say agent, it's going to get you to it
used to be just
person.
Press 0.
Right. Just press 0. So
let's talk about like the specifics of Launch Wake Forest, like how you qualify for it, how do you apply for it, what are the requirements?
So the requirements. So first of all, you go to launchwakeforest.com and you fill out an application. It's a small Google form. Okay. It just basically asks about information about your business. Okay. And so what we do is we evaluate that form. Okay. I usually, if there's enough information in that form for me to make a determination to allow that person in, we allow them in. Okay. If it's very vague, I'll give them a phone call to have a conversation. And what we're looking for are passionate people. Okay. And you'll hear me say that often on all the stuff I do. Okay. Because in entrepreneurship, you necessarily don't have to have an established company or an established idea, but you do need to have passion for that. Okay. So a lot of times they have an idea, okay, or the idea is a little further along, or the established company. Okay. So if that's the case, I want to know that you're willing to put in the work for it. And so that's what we look for students that are going to put in the work. And the first orientation I tell the students is like, you're going to have homework. Okay. This is not high school, okay? If you don't do the homework, you're not getting in trouble with me, okay? It's affecting your bottom line,
Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to improve your bottom line and make yourself more money, do the homework. Okay, if you don't, oh well, you're not costing me anything. Okay, so that's kind of what we have that discussion on homework. I treat them like adults. Okay, there's no treating like kids. So if they're like, oh, why can't you show up this week? That I'm like, okay. They're like, well, can you send me everything? No, you better call one of your classmates to get it. I said, because what happens in life if you miss that opportunity? It's gone.
It's gone.
Okay, and so I do treat them like adults on the class, and so we need to make sure that on the application it reflects that, that passion. And we have had some that like, I kind of thought about it. I don't have a website, don't have Facebook, didn't have really anything done. That's kind of gave it a thought. I'm like, okay, well, you're not quite developed yet. Okay, go and get some more information and do a little bit more. I do try to help, try to find students before they start signing a lease. Okay, and do some heavy stuff. Because we have had some people come to our class that had signed a lease. Okay, didn't understand that they had to pay for an upfit of the building. Okay, and was stuck not being able to use that building for a year. Okay, after they went through our class, they ended up finding financing for it. Okay, and then was able to upfit it. Okay, but they had to pay a monthly lease for a year because they didn't know they could negotiate. Okay, upfit in the lease. Okay. And that the builder or the owner would have done all the construction for them, and they could have just moved into something. Okay,
right.
They were stuck with long terms, with it, without a lot of big up percentage renewals, and so it's just I like to try to get them at certain points that's not going to cost them a lot of money, But I guarantee you that individual that had that is never going to happen to them again. Okay, the next building, the next location they open, they're going to have it all set up before they even move in, and that's how business owners learn, is from experience, If you look at the history of most big successful people, okay, they failed several times. I mean, if you think Elon Musk has been successful the whole time, okay,
right.
He is not. Okay, you don't hear about the closures and all that, and all big. Bill Gates will tell you that not everything was successful in the beginning. Look at Apple. Apple was not successful in the beginning. Okay, in fact, they even fired their CEO, brought him back, and there's a whole movie about it. And so you learn from success. And all Launch is trying to do is just kind of take a little bit out of the way. Okay, we're not going to take it all the way. I told them, you're going to have some issues. And my success rate with Launch is not necessarily these huge successful companies that come out of it. Okay, it's that they understand the risk. Okay, and they understand a more education of what could happen to them. And so far I've not had anybody that's lost their shirt. Okay, that have left the building. We've had some that shut down and changed, moved over back to the corporate world and didn't want to open a business, we had some ultimately didn't find financing, because their backgrounds weren't that strong enough,
Right.
When you come in from an idea, okay, and the idea is going to cost you $3-4 million to build and open, okay, that's not something that's happening overnight, especially if you were not an expertise in that business. For example, if somebody wants to open a mechanic shop, an automotive shop, well, that takes a lot of, building, specialized equipment, tools, and everything. It can be expensive. Okay. Well, if that person's not a mechanic, who's going to give them that kind of money for somebody that's not a mechanic? But I seen it makes money. I'm like, okay, yeah, but maybe if you're a mechanic and you're working in it, okay, not working the office, working the actual shop. So now you got to hire mechanics, okay, you're going to rely on them for the product, okay, and you're not basically helping with the product. You're helping with the office work, so we get some people similar to that come in and nobody will give them money because of that. Now if they were a mechanic and this is their own mechanic shop, then that'd be a little different. So,
do you feel like there's a lot of challenges to overcome with people learning stuff online and like social media and like how things are portrayed?
Yeah, and I do find businesses, believe it or not, are scared of online. Like in fact, last class we just talked about I tell them, I said, okay, so if you get somebody that wants to come do your social media, so all of them I said, all y'all are afraid of social media and all that, okay? But what happens is you're going to hire some girl right out of college, okay, or guy, out of college to come do your social media for you, okay, going to post it and all that, okay? If they're not an employee at your business every day, they're not going to have enough content to make you do any good online. I said, I know, because in my graphic design company, we used to try to do that for customers, okay? And it was like biting teeth, tooth and nail to get the customer to send us information, okay, to be able to post online. Mm-hmm. I was like, we can't post about your company if we don't know about your company, so how are we going to be successful with that, And it was never successful. I don't think we had a successful one at all. Like, we had one, we were posting cool industry news. We were posting things about, their industry, about their business that we happened to see, or take events. Like, if we were at a community event and we seen them, we took pictures of it and we posted it. Okay. But in the end, they were like, well, that's not really causing us to get any momentum on my social media. I'm like, yeah, because you're not giving us information. I said, we need at least 1 or 2 a day, depending on the business. You need 2 or 3 a day. I tell everybody, do a serious post, an industry post, and something humorous, okay, on a daily basis, and you'll get really cool following, okay? I said, but, see how hard that is. Now, AI is making that a lot easier, okay? It's making it a lot easier, but it's also meaning nobody's going to want to pay a consultant for it. They may want to, try to do it themselves, and say, hey, generate me a social media post, that's humorous, and go ahead and upload it, And so it's pretty cool, because I have an AI now. I signed up for a package, an AI package that's got several different employees. They break it out into employees, and one of them's a social media employee. And so that social media employee will come up with posts for me for my condo and my software company, and post it on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Those are the 3 it attaches to. So basically, it presents the social media ad to me, and I look at it, read the text, look at the photo, and then hit schedule, and it schedules it for me and everything. So I approved it, but every week she comes up on Mondays and said, hey, can you fill out like next week's? So all this week is done, so next week's, and like, can you approve next week's? You got 8 to look at, and so I go look at them and approve them, and she schedules them. And so it works out pretty cool. It's just like a little social media intern, that would be doing your social media, but it's AI.
Yeah. How are the results on that? Are you approving most of them, or it's
the condo is getting better results than my software, that real estate company.
Okay.
The real estate company is kind of specialized, and so I'm not expecting a whole lot from it. The condo, though, is getting really good results they're getting people to the website. We've already booked a couple of reservations because they found us on Facebook, because whenever they're booking, I ask them where they find us, and they'll say Facebook or social media. And the only thing I got running on social media is from this little bot that's running. So I find it's working on that. So to me, I find it's certain industries it works good for, and certain industries it doesn't.
Is that what you used for the ad that I saw that actually made me call you? Because that's how this all happened. It popped up on my For You page. I was like, oh, what's that? And then it was good enough that I actually clicked. I was like, oh, I want to know what this is.
That wasn't the little employee bot, no.
Okay.
Because I don't have the employee bot set up for the launch program.
Okay.
What I did was I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, okay, so we had 8 applications. Okay, that's it. Okay. I had to extend it because the deadline had come up, and so we had 8 applications. I'm like, we need at least 10 to have a class. Okay. And so I'm like, now I need to advertise. And so I was going to do some paid Facebook advertising, okay, and extend the deadline for 2 weeks. So I'm like, well, if I'm doing paid Facebook, what do I want the results to be? So I'm like, well, you know what? What would a student want, okay, out of this program? They'd want to look like they're happy, got their business all set up. No. So I went to AI and said, hey, can you generate me 10 images of happy couples outside of businesses, like a coffee shop, a donut shop, a sewing shop, downtown type businesses, I said, and so then it generated 10 of them. Okay. Well, then it had some funky characters for the names. It looked like it had some foreign characters, okay, like some foreign language, okay, that was on there. I'm sure it was some language I don't know, okay. And so I'm like, can you make it generic names, in English, and so then it regenerated them. And so maybe the third iteration, I got the graphics I wanted, okay, from AI, to look like happy couples. And then I had AI generate me the text, so I said, hey, I want upbeat type, for some reason, the AIs, they go dark first. Okay? Add more energy, add more, brightness to them. Okay, because when you first generate graphics, it's like dark, like almost evil, like dark, and I'm like, okay, that's not fun and exciting. So I like fun, exciting, bright images. Okay, so you see how I'm learning how to tell this. Okay. Yeah. And so after I had the images and then had the text, I went and ran the Facebook myself, and put it in there. But we ended up getting 28 applications. Okay, total after that run of Facebook, behind the Facebook. So we selected 20 companies, which was two of the companies had multiple people, or three of them had multiple people in them. So we ended up probably at 23, 24 students in the class with 20 companies. And that's kind of the max I like to have, There were some that, was like, hey, I'd just like to come and take the class. I don't know what I want to do. That wasn't really developed yet. And so we didn't accept those in the class, but we try to keep it around 20 companies. But that was exciting using AI to generate that. Now, of course, I got a phone call from my daughter saying, dang, those AI ads look really funny. I said, they keep coming up on all my social media. I'm like, well, what you want me to do? I was like, that's good graphics. And I think it looks good. It's happy business owners, opening shops. I'm like, and she's like, yeah, but it just that doesn't look good. I said, well, I just got 28 applications, so it did its job. I said, it did its job. Yeah. Okay, so I said, I got the applications I needed to have the class, so, and it was just getting it out there, it's like, I did the specialized, Wake Forest within 10 miles of Wake Forest and Facebook. That's what I like about Facebook advertising. It's good for any other business other than real estate. Okay. You can basically go in and say, hey, I want to do this range, Wake Forest. I want this age group. I want, this type of person, or the person that looks like, I put entrepreneurs, and stuff like that on it. And so it got right to the right person. Of course, I've seen the ad a ton of times. Okay. So I knew it was working. And so anybody that was business focused or anything got it flashed up on their screen, and it really only cost the Launch Wake Forest $130, and so that was a good deal, and so it accomplished it. Now, whether it looked good to my daughter, with the graphics on it, no, okay, and so she got on to me about it, but
she wasn't your target audience.
I said, you're not my target audience. So I said, it reached the people I needed to reach, okay. So.
Yeah, it blew my mind. I was like, man, this looks like a cool program. Like, is it really what it says it is? Yeah. Because there's so many, I get so many ads for all these things, and then you start looking into them. And it's like, oh, you have to pay all this money. It's not really free, whatever. And it's like, how do I not know about this? Like, I've been here for 12 years now, and I've been in business the whole time. And it's like, how did I not find out about it? I thought it was a brand new program, and then reaching out to you and digging into it, I was like, oh, this has been around.
I got several responses after that ad of that same response. Yeah. Oh my God, Brad, it's like, this is a new program? I'm like, no, this is year 6. Okay, we've been doing it for 6 years. We've graduated close to 250 business owners in Wake Forest and Roseville. So I was like, it just got awareness out there, with the pictures of the downtown businesses and people looking at them, So I'm like, oh, this is a cool little thing. So I'm going to run it for launch Roseville in the fall. Okay. Well, no, the spring. So we start launch Roseville in January. What's good about both programs is that I allow people both ends. So like right now we have some people from Youngsville in Wake Forest. We have some people from Raleigh in there. A lot from majority is Wake Forest. But then we have, I think, some from Lewisburg in there. So they come from all over. And so I'm not as strict in launch Wake Forest. Same thing with Roseville. We allow Wake Forest to come in there. Roseville come in there. So we allow other areas to come in because there is no North Raleigh program. Like, for example, Launch Raleigh is for Southeast Raleigh. So you have to have a zip code of Southeast Raleigh to be in launch. We have, I think I want to say, Wake Tech told me every municipality has one now. So you got Cary, Apex, Morrisville, all have launches, okay? And they all have their own little caveats. And so we're all a little bit different. We all have a core of Kaufman type stuff.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, like some don't do dinner, some do. Some do speakers, some don't, Mentorship, some do their own mentors. I use the Small Business Center at Wake Tech for mentors, okay? Because I find people don't want one mentor. They want a mentor for accounting or a mentor for marketing or a mentor, for business, so they want something different. Well, the Small Business Center and for Wake Tech provides free mentors based off what you're looking for. And so I just utilize that resource for mentors at the end. And so there's Wendell has one, Nightdale has one, Wake Forest, Roseville. I'm trying to think of that. Going all the way around. Pretty much everybody. That's everybody. There's about 9 to 10 launch programs throughout Wake County. I've been approached recently by Franklin County. That Franklin County would like to try to have like a launch Franklinton.
Yeah.
And they really are boosting their downtown.
Yep.
If you ain't been to a restaurant downtown Franklinton, you're missing out.
Yep.
Okay. Because this is a really cool experience down there in Franklinton. Well, that whole business interest in Franklinton is sparking other entrepreneurs. And they were like, so the Vance Granville Community College and the chamber over there, economic development, over there, they contacted Mark and said, Mark, can you get us an appointment to kind of see how we can get a launch? I think we might have some money, to do the program. And so, of course, that's outside of Wake Tech's realm.
Sure.
So we have to establish a relationship up there with a community college to help pay for the teaching, and then somebody to help pay for the dinners, because we like to try to keep the same format, and so we may be having a launch Franklinton pretty soon in a couple of months. So
keep the momentum going up there. That's good.
And keep it going up there, because that's building. That's good for us here in Wake Forest, because that's a nice drivable distance that's not in traffic, going the opposite traffic pattern. So
how's the program wrap up? You said they graduate. Like, what's that look like?
Yeah, so we do. So we have orientation in the beginning. We have 10 weeks worth of classes. We do a pitch night. And so the pitch night, I have a little contest with all the class members. They all have to pitch. I kind of tease them and say, look, if you got to pitch to graduate. Okay. And basically all pitching is doing, it's not a complete Shark Tank type thing. It's very similar. We have judges, investors and judges right there that hear their pitch. Okay. In front of an audience. We also allow our audience to come and, they pitch their business. If it's like we have an ice cream vendor in there, so she'll provide sample ice creams to the judges, and they just pitch their business. Okay. They can either ask for money or not ask for money. Okay. I just want them to pitch their business and answer the questions from the investor judges that we have. Okay. And they're like, well, that's kind of, I'm like, well, they're not, some of them have heard of their business already because they came and spoke to them. Okay. And some of them have seen this the first time they've seen them. So when they ask a question, that's like on the street dealing with a customer. Okay. They can ask a question you may not have presented correctly to them all the information they need to know to buy your product or buy your service. Okay. So you need to learn on what they're asking and why they're asking it. Okay. So that you can change so that you can do that toward your customers. So we use it also as an education piece, and there's a prize. Each judge kind of rates it. So instead of us doing money like Shark Tank, they do points, and so each judge will rate a point. And at the end, they can win a 3-night, 4-day trip to my condo at the beach.
Nice. So
I volunteer my condo for the prize for the pitch night, And so far that's been a hit, okay, because every student that's going there kind of loves it, So, and then we have graduation the next week, and they graduate. And so we give them a little certificate, do like a little graduation, and they get a certificate they can frame, They actually get 2 versions. They get one that's an email version, PDF, but then it also has a little signature they can add at the end of their email signature with a little emblem that looks like a shield that shows Launch Wake Forest, so it gives them like a certification seal that they've passed the class, You can go to a couple of downtown businesses and still see their certificate, basically their launch certificate framed and behind the cash register.
Something they're proud of.
Something they're real proud of.
That's awesome.
And so that's a good feeling for me that we started a program that they really enjoy, So there's been some. I'm past the point. I'm on week 3 that I expect by week 3 that if you weren't serious about the business, you pretty much have quit the class. And I've had 2 that have quit. The class, and it's understandable. And I don't judge. I email them. Say they like, oh, this is not going to work. I say that's how I understand. I said if you need to come back, you can come back. I have one lady that took the Launch Roseville class, to open a Pilates studio. Opened a Pilates studio, loves it, but now she wants to kind of franchise that. And so now she's back in Launch Wake Forest with a different business, and she's like, I want to learn how to franchise this and open more, And so it was funny because we were talking a little bit about it, and we gave her some eye-opening things, like who she was marketing to might have not been the one that she wanted to market to. If you're opening a franchise, who would you market to? If it's like a fitness franchise, would you market to somebody that goes to the gym all the time?
Right.
Or do you market somebody that is more investor friendly?
Yeah.
Okay. To me, I told her, I said, you need to be marketing to investors, because investors have the money to do the upfits, the builds, and everything like that. So do you think somebody that goes to the gym all the time is going to have the money to open a franchise? And that really opened her eyes, looking at that, like, I may be marketing the wrong person. I'm like, yeah, because I guarantee you the person that probably has the money has not been going to the gym.
That's right.
And so may not have been taking your class, and so she was laughing, and so she's changing her perspective on what she's going to be marketing to.
Right.
But those are the kind of aha moments you have in class to learn, about it. And so that's what I get excited about, about that, and so some get excited about employees, and boy, do we have stories about employees. And that's one thing that I had a requirement. It's kind of funny because I teach the class, and I have not always been the teacher of the class. This is the first year I've taught the class, believe it or not. I've been a program administrator for the previous years. And I've always been at the class anyway, and I added things to the class when I didn't care for that I thought the instructor might have missed. Right? Well, a lot of the instructors the only business experience was they got their license to be a contractor to receive payments from maybe Wake Tech. And so they didn't really have employees or anything like that. They may have worked for a corporation, and retired, did this. So there was never, I started to say, hey, look, can you find me a teacher that's had at least 3 employees? Like some employees, or something, because then there's just a different flow of it. And they were having a tough time finding teachers, believe it or not, that were entrepreneurs, like true entrepreneurs that have been in business for a while. And so then finally they said, well, Brad, you're going to attend the classes all the time. Why don't you teach? I'm like, okay, I guess I can, So they're providing me to teach this Launch Roseville, Launch Wake Forest, and I've been enjoying it, I thought, it's like, what kind of limitations you're going to put on me and all this about the course and all that, and they have not. I've sent them my curriculum. I've come up with the curriculum I want to teach and all that, and now they're using it in other places. So I'm like, okay, I'll copy my material. And so the other thing I do with Launch that's a little different is one of the business ideas I'm thinking about, I'm doing in Launch with the students.
Oh, that's
okay. So there's a software program I'm working on called My Trip Logics, which is a online travel journal that creates a trip itinerary. You upload your photos. It uses AI to basically help you give titles to your photos, basically saying, this is a happy place in the mountains, using geocode information from your photos, from your phone and all that. taking the AI, giving descriptions, okay, and then generating a coffee table book that you can order, okay, and put on your coffee table, okay, get it printed, shipped to you, and then put it on your coffee table, okay.
Right.
Or you can have the website version and share with friends that this is how my trip went, type thing. It'll show you itinerary. You share your itinerary with your family that you're on the trip with, so that everybody can upload photos to it. They can see where y'all going that day and everything.
Yeah.
There's like door lock code, unlock codes, and all that stuff for the trip. So that's something I've developed. Okay, so I'm going through these same exercises with the students with my company. Okay, and a couple of them like, is this a fake company? I'm like, no. And so one of the AIs I showed them was that software interface that I'm using to write this.
Right.
Okay. And so I showed them like, okay, I said, you see how this word, it said something about set up an itinerary. And I said, well, I'm going to change it to say create itinerary. And so I'm going to tell it real short, like, hey, I want to change that word on the button to this. Okay. And hit OK. And then sure enough, it changed it on the software. It reloaded the new version of it. I gave all of them a link to look on their phones, and they were able to look at it on their phones, and they were amazed, by this AI tool. And so I utilize this type of thing to show them that this is a company I'm working on and I'm thinking about, doing it. We did surveys just recently. I showed them how to create a survey, okay, so that they can get information. Okay. And I said, I use surveys early to see if I want to do this product. Okay. So the survey says, would you be interested in this type of program? And it says like an itinerary trip booklet. Okay. You say agree, somewhat agree, disagree, agree,
Right.
And then you ask like, would you pay between what price for the coffee book? So it's got 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 40 to 50, 70 to 80, type thing. And then I had a QR code, and they all called up the QR code. They filled out their survey right there in class. And then I called up the results on the screen, and I said, look, 60% of y'all, okay, said agree or somewhat agree. I said, to me, evaluating this, I'm like, that's pretty good. That's about the same I got in Roseville this past semester, so I've been working on it for a year, so I did it in theirs. And I said, so to me, I'm going to continue, because I got from people that knew nothing about this program to say, oh, I might be 60% interested. Okay. So to me, that's a good market. Okay. The other thing we do is use surveys for when they were asked about, so is this a good amount? I had in my head that I want to charge $49 for the book. That's a 20-page book, coffee table book.
Right.
Okay. Any more additional pages would be like, I don't know, $5 a page, something like that. But the initial one would be $49. Well, it all came out. They all said that they would pay between $40 and $50, for a coffee table book. And so, showing them how I did that with my company, I now said, because I've got a couple of surveys. In fact, that's what everybody's doing this week. So tonight, when we get there, everybody's going to have their QR code for us to do surveys for their own company. And we're going to give them some information tonight, about their company. So people are using this focus group, here that we have of other business owners to get information about their company also. So that's what's cool about Launch.
That's cool.
They're networking together. They're finding out. They're asking. One of the issues that me and my wife always had in the software company is you couldn't really talk about business to any of our friends. All our friends had jobs, at corporations. We rarely had anybody else that opened a business other than us. Okay. So like, when you had an issue with an employee, okay, you couldn't necessarily tell my best friends that I had about that issue with that employee, okay? They wouldn't understand anyway. They'd say, let's say, because you hear them like, oh, my boss is, getting all the raise and all this. Like, a reason and so I had a different perspective when they were talking about their bosses or the company, and all this. And so it was kind of hard. And so this gives them other people to talk to. So when we found business owners, we were ecstatic to go out to dinner with them and be able to discuss things. They were talking back and forth saying, we understand your problem. Yeah. We had the same issue with these employees or things like that, And so business owners talking to other business owners, okay, is something really unique and really awesome about Launch, that now they have about 20 other business owners that they can talk to about business. Right. So I have to run them out of the class. Come 8:30. Okay, we end at 8:30. I got to get them out the room. I said, y'all can talk as long as y'all want in the parking lot. Okay. We have really good partner. Wake Electric lets us use their training room downstairs for the program, really cool electronics, we got a big old screen the length of the room for us to put up presentations and everything on. It's a really good atmosphere. I really love that building, and they provide that for us. And so a lot of times at 8:30, I'm moving them out in the parking lot. Y'all talk out in the parking lot. So I left about 9:00 last week, and there was still 2 groups out there talking in the parking lot. So that was pretty cool.
It's like instant network. That's cool.
Instant network. They're getting excited. They're feeling it. And that's what I get excited as a program administrator, that, okay, this is what this program was created for, for them to kind of network and all that. So it does work. And that's why I hope more businesses see it, and more people think about it and want to come, and join it. It is 100% free for individuals. We don't charge for anything. We provide little binders with, the different papers and workshops that we go through and do. We do split up in groups every once in a while so that they can, like SWOT analysis tonight. They'll split up in groups, of 3, and then 3 businesses, and talk about what their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are, and then what they do is, after they finish writing it down, then they'll come up and present it. Each come and present, this is what I found, and so that's the program we're doing tonight with it. So it's exciting. If anybody, feel free to go on the Launch Wake Forest and contact page and send a message that comes directly to me. I think that's how y'all reached us. And so I usually get them and respond back to them. So
yeah, you responded very quickly.
Cool.
Yeah. Is there any big success stories that really stand out to you that have been through the program?
If my memory was better, I would say there's a couple of them that I really enjoyed. A bunch of one is Dolores's business. I forget the name of the business, but across from Shorty's in downtown, the little craft shop. It's a co-op, so it's got different craft vendors in it. Okay, she used to be on the street down the side. Okay, and so they come into our business, and the one thing about Dolores and them is they, her and their business partner were both crafters. Okay, and so they had started this business because they needed a place for their crafts, and so then they had other people come join them and bring craft products to it. Okay, and so her and her partner would rotate a schedule to be the person that checks everybody out. Okay, and so they charge minimum, for the vendors to be there. Okay, so when we got her in there, we explained to her that you're not a craft business. You're actually a real estate business, okay, because you have space, okay, and how much is that space worth? And so that's what we had her do, is kind of create different corners, different spaces. How much is that worth? How much is that costing you with AC and everything, along with your time, okay? Because at the time, they weren't making money for their time, okay? The only money they made is what profit they made off their craft business.
Right.
Okay, and I'm like, well, y'all losing money because you're paying for electricity and all that other stuff. And so her business is still going, okay? And it's been, I guess we've been here 9 years, and she was in the first class, okay? And it's still going strong. And I'm proud of that, because that's a craft co-op, and not all of those stay going this long.
Right.
As a craft co-op. And so some of the other ones in downtown have opened and closed.
Yeah.
And so I was excited about, believe it or not, that little Main Street business. Now in Roseville, we had a guy that had a striker, okay, that was like a fire. So you could, from here, if you had a fire down here on the floor, you choose a couple of strikes and it would start a fire down there, okay? And so he had this professional video done, and he had made it to several interviews on Shark Tank, okay? During class, he had already been interviewed by Shark Tank, okay? But we had not heard that he had been on it. I don't know if he has been on it or not. And so he wanted to actually do that in Arise co-working space where we have it over there. It's got carpet. I'm like, no, you're not shrinking it. Just set your carpet on fire. No, and so he played the video that he had done that he had submitted to Shark Tank. Okay. So he played that video, and so that's the closest one came to Shark Tank that we've had. And then in Wake Forest, there was another. I want to say the Blue Ox Bakery. Okay. He has been several cupcake wars. He won on cupcake wars on the Food Network. I think he won $10,000 on that. And so he's got a good bakery out in North Hills area in Raleigh. And so he does a lot of the baked items for the airport. So a lot of the croissants and muffins and things like that at the airport, he does that. So he's really trying to open his own bakery storefront. Right now he's working at basically the commissary kitchens where he cooks his products and all that and sells it throughout different other locations and desserts at different restaurants. But he wants to try to find his own bakery and have his own storefront. And so he's been doing that for a while, and so he's real successful. And I'm proud of his business too, because that's a hard business to continue for a long time.
100%.
Yeah. We'll see, because he just had a son probably about a year or two now. And so I had not followed up. I try to follow up with a little bit. A lot of times they call me, and there's just so many of them now that I try to keep track of. Most of them do it. And so those are kind of aha moments there. I'm sure there's some I'm not remembering.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. But that many students coming through, you're not going to.
Yeah, it's over 200. Yeah, over 200 business owners. And getting to know them is fun. Like I had forgot the lady who did Launch Roseville, that she had not found a Pilates studio, and so she opened a Pilates studio. Which was cool. I had not known that she had opened the Pilates studio. I knew she was looking for it. So there's not a whole lot of. I don't try to constantly stay afterwards. I let them run their business.
Sure.
We did the education, we run their business. But I do help them if I'm needed. They know my phone number. They call and I answer and help them out. So
that's great. Well, we've taken a lot of your time today, and I appreciate you giving us that time. Is there anything that we're missing? Anything else that you want to tell us about?
I don't think so. I think we covered all y'all talking points that y'all were looking for. If anybody's interested in also sponsoring dinners, come and talk to us. We do offer visitors to come sponsor the dinner for the night and speak, on a topic, a business-related topic. Just contact me at, through the launchwakeforest.com website, and we can help get somebody in there to speak. I think dinners usually cost about $250, so we're not an expensive program, type thing. And it's only, a market of 20 people, 15, 20 people there, so it's not a huge market, but it is getting your name out there and doing things. And a lot of times, if we already have somebody, we don't allow multiple type things. For example, financial planners. I have several of them already. That's there. But any other kind of businesses that want to talk about a certain topic.
Sure.
I try to bring businesses that's not going to sell them something, but will offer them a value. But that's the only thing I think I didn't say before. So.
And like we said, we're happy to help with that in any way we can. If you need somebody to speak about bookkeeping, setting up your books, stuff like that, we can definitely help with that. We're building a consulting firm, but part of what we're doing too is just trying to get information out to entrepreneurs. So we're not right for everybody. If somebody's starting out, they're not going to want to pay for our services, and that's fine. But there's so many resources out here, and that's what we want to shine a light on, because at the end of the day, we're trying to build this network and help people out along the way. It's not just about building a firm. So it's a fun adventure. And that's what led us to here and meeting new people, and we're having fun with it. One question I like to ask everybody at the end of our interviews is, and the reason I like to ask it is because it had a huge effect on my life and like how I look at things, and it changed my trajectory in business. How do you define success?
I define success as being happy. Having a lot of money is not always being happy. And so to me, it's like, But they were like, well, Brad, you can continue to open more businesses, do more things. Like, I want to do things that make me happy. Okay, that excited. I enjoy my family. I enjoy being with my family. My mom and dad's retired, so I like me and my dad go to lunch. In fact, he already texted me, "Are you available for lunch?" And I'm like, "Not till 1 o'clock." Okay, and so me and him go to lunch all the time. Yeah, how many more times is that going to be available?
Right.
And I don't. And so to me, being successful is being happy and just enjoying life. I enjoy, like Thursday, I will be in the mountains, okay, and I'll probably be back by Saturday. So it's just going down there to enjoy things that I do. I don't need to be having millions and millions of dollars, to make me happy. Now I am comfortable of the way I live. Okay, I have a modest, at the time we moved here, it was $400,000 house. Okay, now it's like $700,000 house with the house pricings right now, but that house makes me happy. My son just turned 22. At 21, he bought himself a house, a townhome in Nightdale, after graduating college, because we were able to pay for his college, So that kind of makes me happy that he is on a steady path. My daughter's on a steady path in college now, and those things are paid for. So even though having money causes me that, but it's because I'm happy, buying an attachment for my tractor in the mountains, okay, makes me happy. Having the money to be able to buy the tractor attachment makes me happy. So it's the happiness, I think, that makes me successful. I don't think anybody should be doing anything that doesn't make them happy or excited. This business venture that I'm looking at on the trip journal, the trip. That's something we do anyway. We go on trips. I do an itinerary for the family. We take everybody, on a vacation once a year. And so I have this itinerary that I've always done every year. Okay. We always taking photos, and the thing that causes a lot of problem is my wife takes forever to do the book, and then we at least got to have it done by Christmas because we like to give it to the grandparents, of our trips, so that they have the coffee table book for the grandparents. It takes my wife forever to do the book or to do all the photos and all this. And so we're like, that's a natural thing. Why don't we just create a piece of software to help with that?
Yeah.
Because that's something we do. And so something we enjoy. Okay. Of course, my daughter being in marketing, she's all excited about, yeah, Daddy, get that up so we can go on these trips and take these pictures. I'm like, we go to Fuji, we can go to Italy again, and we can do all these pictures and use the app. Okay. And market it. I'm like, yeah. So you just want to go on all these trips. And it's like, so that's why I think people, you enjoy your business where it's not necessarily a business. It's a good way of life, that you work and you make money, but you enjoy it. And so being happy is what I find that.
Awesome. I think that's a great way to end it. So again, thank you for your time today.
No problem. Thank you very much. I'm glad y'all started a podcast here in Wake Forest. I think it's what needed here in the area.
Yeah. And that's, just what I see in like this same realm that I'm trying to get into, it's like you watch the stuff online and it's these, 100 millionaires, billionaires doing these big things. And it's so like, that's a dream, sure, but it's so hard to just wrap your head around, I feel like. Yeah. So I'm bringing it back down to Main Street and like real life entrepreneurs in your neighborhood. Like they're everywhere. They're in every town, and kind of giving people an introduction to that, I think, is super important.
Yeah. And I think the reason why, like, we made good money when we sold our software company. But I think the problem that I have with a lot of it is we worked for a lot of companies that had a lot of money, a lot of families that had a lot of money. None of them were happy. None of them, like, I think one individual that had millions and millions of dollars, didn't have good relationships with their kids, the kids got in trouble all the time, with the law and everything. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want my kids to grow up like this, And so it kind of made me where I don't know if I really wanted, that much money to do that kind of stuff. So it's like, to make enough for us to live comfortably like we want to live, it's been great. So, and I think that this kind of community here in Wake Forest is what, like, when we first moved here, we had the choice to move to anywhere in Raleigh. Okay. At first, when I did my research from Louisiana, it looked like we needed to be in Cary or Holly Springs or Apex. Okay. So that's where we focused our first move here. Okay. On. And so we're like, oh my God, you start off at Apex, the house, like we were thinking 400,000 would be enough for a house, and so we're like, okay, Apex at 600,000, Cary it's 500,000. Maybe Holly Springs we can get 400,000 on a house. Okay. Yeah. And so as I started looking, it was that way. And then like my wife had her office was going to be in Morrisville. And so I'm like, she's going to have to pay for the toll every morning and evening coming home back and forth from these places. And so then my realtor, so I had scheduled with a realtor when I was here, like looked at 40 houses. Okay. And like she passed by and I'm like, no. She's like, you don't even want to go in? I'm like, no, I don't like the area, don't like this, don't like neighborhood. I had an issue with I didn't want a garage on the door on the front of the house, so that knocked all those houses out. And so then she's like, oh, well, if you want a little bit bigger lot, it's kind of a little further out there. Let's take you to Wake Forest. I said, well, wait, there is a neighborhood I looked at Wake Forest that I like that's got fiber, but it showed that it was an hour drive to Morrisville. And she's like, yeah, it's an hour of traffic, but it's about 45 minutes without traffic. I'm like, well, that's not bad. And so she took me to look at this house, and we pull up in the driveway in the Holden Village right here in Wake Forest. There's this double porch house right here on the corner. Okay. I'm like, my wife wants that one. Right there. She's like, what? I'm like, yeah, that one. Okay. And so we go look, and she's like, oh, it's available, and so we walked through. It didn't have the floors or cabinets. It was still new construction, still had some construction on. And we went and talked to the model home, lady in the model home, and she's like, yeah, that one's still available. It's $389,000. I'm like, what? 389? I'll cut you a check right now. Okay. And so we cut her the deposit they wanted right there and signed it right there. I'm like, look, if we don't move into it, I'm having it as an investment. Okay. So it's just an investment home. So I'm okay with that too. I said, we'll rent it out or something, And so then I get back to the hotel and tell my wife, because she had been working the whole time. And I tell her, like, look, I said, I put a deposit down on a house. I found a house. What? I didn't even see it. I'm like, trust me, you'll like it. That's like, she's like, and so this is about 8, 9 o'clock at night. Yeah. And so she's like, well, let's go look at it. I said, well, it's about 45-minute drive. It's in Wake Forest. He's like, oh, that's not far. I'm like, so we go to Wake Forest that night. So about 10 o'clock, we're pulling in the neighborhood. Luckily, they had street lights and everything on. And so sure enough, we pull in. She's like, oh, I like that house right there. I'm like, that's the one I bought. I said, that one right there. She's like, oh my God, that's so nice, And so we go look at it. We're peeking in the windows because the doors are locked and all that at night, And she's like, oh my God, this is great. And so then we go back and, it's like, then we come up the next weekend to look at it in person, and she loved it, and it's like, wants to do it. And then of course the lady's like, hey, we kind of made a pricing error. It's not $389, it's $398. I'm like, okay, that's still good. I said, okay. Well, then my realtor was like, oh, wait, no, that's not okay. I was like, and so my realtor negotiated the refrigerator in it, the mini blinds on every window in the house, 2-inch plantation. Okay. She negotiated all this stuff. Okay. For them to swap the price. Okay. Yeah. And so we're like, oh, that's good. And so then we moved in probably 2 months after that. We went back down to Louisiana. The house was ready in June. This was probably April time frame that we were looking at the beginning. So we moved back in, moved in June, and enjoyed it. But we went down the street, downtown Wake Forest. I'm like, oh my God, this is like a Rockwell painting right here, So that's what kind of really sold us, was the downtown area, and we even had a magical moment. My daughter with Thales had a winter wonderland dance in the little space above the cotton company, up there. And so as we were dropping her off, it started snowing in downtown Wake Forest while we were walking her to her dance, and so me and my wife were like, oh my God, look at this. It's snowing. So it really is a Rockwell painting. So that's what really sold us on Wake Forest, and we got to know the mayor real well. Mayor Vivian comes over to the house all the time. She's done kind of every type of little event we've had with the kids, or the Rotary event we had, she's come to, Yeah. And so we've gotten to know her real well. And she's seen our kids grow up, and And so you just don't have that in a lot of places.
No, it still has that small town feel, even though it's growing and growing. Our story is almost exactly the same. We had to move here for my wife to work at RTP.
Yeah.
And we were the exact same. We were Holly Springs, Fuquay, like all around that Apex. We looked at probably 30 houses
because there were
down
school
there.
districts at the time. School districts down there were really good compared to up here,
And
so
there was one house that we kept going back to that was in Wake Forest, and like we even scheduled to see it. We're like, all right, we're not going to drive all the way up there today.
Yeah.
And then we ended up coming up here one time, and we're like, this is it. And we bought that house, and like you said, coming into downtown, and like I saw it. I'm from a real small town.
Yeah.
Like as soon as I saw that hardware store with the guy sitting in there in the chairs, I was like, this is it. This is where we're gonna live.
Yeah.
Like,
Joe and him have to do a great job with the hardware store. I love that little hardware store. And but yeah, it's a small town feel. Now I do like the growth. Everybody's complaining that, we're deforesting, Wake Forest. There's not gonna be a tree left in Wake Forest. But drive to the beach, go through Elizabeth City. Okay, go that direction. Okay, there's a lot of towns hurt.
Yep.
Okay, that are not growing but actually decaying. Okay,
Yep.
You see these houses. I mean, they're just like they're bad. And then like Elizabeth City's downtown having a hard time coming back. Franklinton was having a hard time coming back. Youngsville still ain't quite there yet with their downtown. So to not have the growth. I mean, we have growth that keeps us going. That's what keeps the downtown and keeps this area where people want to move here, is the growth. I mean, once we stop growing, it's just pretty much going to wear down, and that's going to be it. So I enjoy the growth. A lot of people don't here. And what's funny is I also realized I moved here, okay?
Yep.
And I moved here for this, okay? So why would I fault new people that want to move here? So every time it's funny because you don't meet very many people here from Wake Forest. A good friend of mine, James Holden, is really one of the only ones I know with Holden Oil and Gas. Okay, that's been here forever. Okay, I know him real well, and he's actually born and raised here. So, because Holden Village, I think, is named after his relatives that used to own the
barbecue Holdens, not the oil Holdens.
Yeah, and so
that's a whole history there.
Yeah, whole history there, and so. We lived on old farm that kept the silos, so you can redevelop something and keep history, but it looks much better than the old rundown barns they had along with all the fields and all that were there that were just decaying, because nobody ain't used it for farm, so, but yeah, I think we have a good community and need more things like this to kind of keep it going.
100%. Awesome. Well, thanks again.
No
I sure do appreciate it.